Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're digging into a case that literally captivated the entire nation. But look, we aren't just here to recount a sensationalized headline. No, we are going to treat the Sherri Papini case as a profound, mind-bending, psychological puzzle of deception. We're going to examine this unbelievable story through the lens of criminal psychology. We'll look at the intricate patterns of pathological lying and explore how one single individual managed to manipulate the public, federal investigators, and unbelievably even mental health professionals. Understanding extreme cases like this gives us a fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying look into the manipulation tactics that we might actually encounter in our own everyday lives. So let's dive right in.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Anatomy of a hoax. 2. Unraveling the grand deception. 3. The psychology of lying. 4. The financial toll of fraud. And 5. Manipulating the narrative again.
All right, part 1, anatomy of a hoax, the initial facade.
Picture this. It's a period of absolute terror for a California community. On November 2, 2016, a 34-year-old mother of two, Sherri Papini, just vanishes while out for a jog in Redding, California. Just 2 days later, a GoFundMe campaign goes live, rapidly pulling in cash to aid in the search. The manhunt goes global. And then, exactly 22 days later, on Thanksgiving morning of all days, she miraculously reappears on the side of Interstate 5, nearly 150 miles away from where she first vanished.
But guys, the physical state she was in when investigators found her, it was intensely alarming. She was severely emaciated. She was bound with a waist chain and hose clamps, her hair had been choppily cut off, and she literally had the word Exodus physically branded into her right shoulder. Her claim? She sat down with the Shasta County Sheriff's Office and the FBI and told them she'd been abducted at gunpoint by two Hispanic women who tortured her for weeks. It was a terrifying narrative, and it successfully mobilized massive public sympathy and law enforcement resources. Moving right along to part 2, unraveling the grand deception, the forensic reality.
For years, investigators are out there hunting for these two Hispanic women based on Papini's highly detailed sketches. But the forensic reality? It told a completely different story. Unknown male DNA was found on the clothing she was wearing when she was discovered on the highway. Fast forward to 2020, and familial DNA tracking matches that sample to a guy named James Reyes, an ex-boyfriend of Papini's. When questioned, Reyes just admitted that the whole kidnapping was a hoax. There were no masked strangers. She hadn't been abducted at all. She had voluntarily asked him to pick her up, and she spent those entire 22 days just hiding out in a boarded-up room in his Southern California apartment.
To make her trauma believable, she went to horrifying physical lengths. According to the federal affidavit and her ex-boyfriend's confession, she purposefully stopped eating to lose a drastic amount of weight. She gave herself bruises by physically battering her own body. She chopped off her own hair. She even requested that her ex-boyfriend heat up a tool to brand her shoulder. I mean, these were highly calculated, deliberate actions all taken in total isolation just to authenticate a fabricated story.
Okay, part 3, the psychology of lying, shifting realities.
Now, you might be wondering, how does someone even do this? Well, the source documents revealed that this grand hoax was absolutely not an isolated, out-of-the-blue incident. It was actually the culmination of a lifelong pattern. Investigators spoke with an old acquaintance from a Friday Night Live youth program who gave this chilling quote. Papini was good at creating different realities for people so that they would see what she wanted them to see, which got her really good attention. Other friends backed this up, noting a long history of making up lies, especially about being a victim of abuse, dating all the way back to her teenage years.
Psychotherapists and criminal psychology experts evaluating the case point heavily toward traits associated with cluster B and narcissistic personality disorders. Essentially, these are conditions where individuals display dramatic, highly emotional, or unpredictable behavior. But the core feature here is this constant need to construct and shift realities. These alternate realities aren't just simple lies, right? They're elaborate defense mechanisms built to protect a deeply fragile ego, to secure attention, and to maintain this perpetual status as a victim. Understanding this really helps us see why some people will just double down on a lie, no matter the consequences.
And perhaps the most alarming aspect of this whole psychological manipulation is just how incredibly effective it was. Following her return, Papini actually sought therapy, paying for it using victim compensation funds. She successfully convinced a licensed therapist that she had been kidnapped, beaten, and branded, which resulted in a clinical diagnosis of acute post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a brilliant, if terrifying, illustration of how individuals with severe personality disorders can deploy manipulation tactics so well that they deceive even highly trained mental health professionals who have to rely on their patients' self-reported trauma.
Which brings us to Section 4, the financial toll of fraud, the cost of lies.
So, after years of maintaining this massive lie, even after FBI agents sat her down, explicitly warned her it was a crime to lie to federal officers, and confronted her directly with the DNA evidence, the Department of Justice finally stepped in. In 2022, Papini was arrested. She ultimately pleaded guilty to 1 count of mail fraud and 1 count of making false statements. The cold hard reality of this deception? It landed her an 18-month federal prison sentence.
On top of prison time, the court ordered her to pay a staggering restitution, $309,902. Why that specific number? Because pathological lies waste real-world resources. This figure represents the actual financial losses incurred by the California Victim Compensation Board, the Social Security Administration, the local sheriff's office, and the FBI. Just think about the countless hours and taxpayer dollars poured into hunting down phantom kidnappers, all while actual real crimes went uninvestigated.
And then we've got the crowdsourced money. A GoFundMe campaign raised nearly $50,000, and it was intended purely to bring Sherri home safe. But the federal affidavit revealed a genuinely shocking truth about what happened to that cash. Once she returned, the money was transferred into personal accounts and used to pay off the family's personal credit cards and expenses. Just wow. It's a really stark reminder of the financial opportunism that so often tags along with these elaborate psychological frauds.
Finally, Section 5. Manipulating the narrative again. The lie continues.
You'd think serving a federal prison sentence would be the end of it, right? Nope. The manipulation continues. In a 2025 true crime documentary series, Papini has completely pivoted. She has totally abandoned the fabricated story about the Hispanic women. Instead, she is now claiming that her ex-boyfriend James Reyes actually kidnapped and branded her non-consensually. She's blending genuine, raw emotion with partial truths to craft a brand new, highly dramatic narrative for a whole new audience.
This is textbook behavior for the psychological profiles we talked about earlier. When one reality gets totally dismantled by undeniable forensic evidence, the ego just cannot accept the harsh truth of being exposed as a fraudster. So what happens? A new alternate reality has to be created. The stories become even more dramatic, and experts are really raising the question now, is her current therapist or even the media platforms interviewing her just unknowingly enabling these continuous manipulation tactics?
Which leaves us with this final, profound question to consider today. When reality threatens a fragile ego, does the lie ever truly end? As you can see, the Sherri Papini case shows us that for some people, the need to control the narrative and maintain that victim role is so deep-seated, the deception just morphs and adapts to survive. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning what you see out there, and I'll catch you next time.